guest is the force behind a movement beautifying women and children's shelters nationwide. But it's more than just making these spaces more vibrant and cheerful. They're also building spaces within the shelters to provide residents creative outlets, and that makes her a rad human. From Enchanted Makeovers, let's welcome Terry, everybody. Give it up for Terry. All right, so give us kind of the overview of Enchanted Makeovers and what you do.
Enchanted Makeovers began in 2007, and I was asked to volunteer and paint a wall at a shelter. And when I got to the shelter, I realized it was way beyond paint. The rooms were, everything was broken. And I knew that that space needed to be healing and nurturing, and I believe that comes with quilts, handmade quilts.
I love quilting. We were just talking about this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And murals and pillowcases that are embroidered. And from that, it grew to our capes for kids. We believe every child is a superhero.
Yeah.
And the pillowcase program, and then the doll adoption.
Yeah.
And it organically grew to our sacred sewing room.
Yeah.
And it's impacted thousands of lives of women and children across the country.
Absolutely. It's such a, we were talking about this in the commercial break, but it's such a therapeutic thing to do and a meditative thing to do, because I'm not good at meditating in the sense of how people say it, but man, if you put me, if I'm quilting or if I'm building Legos, I love doing that too, because it's like, it puts me in a place where all my brain kind of slows down and I'm not just thinking about one thing, and it's
no
like my form of,
nothing.
No bills, no like chaos
Yes.
going on. Yeah, it's a nice thing, and I think that's a beautiful thing, a beautiful outlet that everyone needs. In some form, whatever you need in that form.
Absolutely.
But yeah. Well, this is largely inspired by your own experience, right?
Yes. We battled with homelessness. In one of our homes, we lost. I remember my mother putting all of us in this huge brown station wagon.
Yeah.
And she drove around, and she found this house that was abandoned, and it had tires and weeds, and she went next door to the church and said, "Do you guys own this?" And they said, "Yes." She's, "Well, like, can I put a little deposit down and put my family in there?"
Yeah.
And they said yes, and this beautiful transformation I watched, my mother restoring this house with oopsie paint and clearance wallpaper, and I realized she was restoring herself, or she was restoring the home.
Yeah.
And from that, I think just that experience and watching my mother inspired me that I knew this was my calling, that I needed to serve women and children in shelters.
But you mentioned several aspects of the program, but what's the idea behind the sewing room? I tell everybody.
The sewing, I always knew my mother battled with depression. She still does. And I just remember as a kid, my mother, when she was sewing, you would hear Carly Simon and James Taylor playing.
Yeah.
And it was a Saturday morning, and I'm watching cartoons, and I knew that everything's gonna be okay. But then I also remember the days where it was dark and the machine wasn't going.
Yeah.
And I always try to share that. I try to focus on the light. I know there's dark times, but if we can focus on that light, and
It's not going to last forever.
yes. And she said, "You know, a sewing machine saved my life." And that was through just the programs we have that she shared that with me. And I said, we need to have permanent sewing rooms in shelters for women. That it's therapeutic, they learn a skill, they can provide for their family.
Yeah.
And that's how that all came about.
Yeah, and it's empowering, and it builds confidence in a different kind of way. So how do the sewing rooms work?
Well, the shelter has to be able to give up a room. So we don't donate machines, we donate a program. So we're big about having bolts of fabric.
Yeah.
So we want the best, scissors, and so the women, feel like, okay, I can do this.
Setting them up for success.
Yes,
yeah.
Absolutely. And in the program too, I'm encourage the volunteer instructors for the women to give back to their community. So we have women giving pillowcases to hospitals, making dresses for girls in Africa.
Yeah. Serving others serves yourself. Joining us now is one of those volunteers for the nonprofit, Judy. Give it up for Judy, y'all. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask you a question in a second, but real quick, because she's holding a doll. So Judy's part of the doll program. So tell us more about that.
The doll adoption is my story as a little girl.
Yeah.
My dolls were so important to me. When I was taking care of my doll, I was taking care of myself. I didn't know that as a child. I know that now. And I knew that this had to be one of our programs for the children, that they could comfort a doll. I remember just tucking in my doll and make sure she was all cozy. And that's why we created it.
Yeah, my kids do that with their stuffies and dolls.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like a special relationship. It's not, it's beautiful. So Judy, how did you get involved in the doll adoption program?
Well, my cousin heard of Terry's program that she was doing, and after our daughter Maddie passed away, we wanted to do something to honor her because she was spunky and strong, but she wasn't strong enough to overcome schizophrenia. And so she took her life when she was 20 years old.
Afterwards, I'm sure people were trying to pour into you, like maybe something that you could do because she was such a creative person, right? Is that how you found the doll adoption?
Well, Maddie's full name is spelled like the childhood storybook,
Yeah.
Madeline.
Yeah.
And so we thought that we could capture some of Maddie's creativity and spunk and quirkiness in doing the dolls.
Yeah.
And so we got together with family and friends, and we made 28 dolls. And each doll was different, and each doll had a heart that had a tiger lily on it, because tiger lilies were Maddie's favorite thing.
Oh, beautiful flower.
And each doll had a tag on it that told a little bit about Maddie's story, but it also had the telephone number for NAMI, which is the National Association for Mental Illness. And I wanted to have that resource for the people who were receiving the dolls in case they ever needed that.
Yeah.
And this doll is the only one left from that batch, and her name is Lily.
Yeah. Oh, I love that doll, by the way. Super beautiful. So I have to ask you this as well, Terry. This is all run by volunteers, right?
It's 100% volunteer.
So,
17 years.
Yeah. So, I mean, a core part of this is a nonprofit. How do you make it? Just how do you survive on that?
It's the volunteers and donors. It's people just living check to check that step up.
Yeah.
Lots of prayers and
It's a
That's it.
beautiful thing, because what a beautiful way to honor her, to make something, because she was so creative, like a way to honor her and make all those dolls. I don't know if I'd let go of that one. So Judy, how do you feel when you personally hand out these dolls?
Well, we went to a shelter and we laid out all of the dolls on the table in front of the room.
Yeah.
And then the girls came in and I shared Maddie's story and I told them a little bit about the heart that is on the doll, and then I told them about the number for resources if they would ever need that.
Yeah.
And then I said, if you would like to have a doll, you can come up and pick whichever one you want. And they all stood up and they rushed to the table.
Yeah.
And they each started picking out dolls, and they started naming them, and they started telling their stories.
Yeah.
And there was one doll that looked particularly a lot like Maddie. And the young lady who came and picked her up came over to me and she said, I will take really good care of her for you. And so that was a very impactful day. I mean, it changed lives. It changed my life, and it changed those 28 girls. And because of Enchanted Makeovers, this impact is going on to more and more people. So if there's anything that I can do to help Enchanted Makeovers, I'm so grateful to Terry, and if there's any little part that I can do, then I'm happy to do that.
Absolutely. Oh, my goodness. Woo. What a beautiful thing to say. Well, Terry, for 20 years, our friends at Premier Yarns have celebrated the healing power of creativity through their high-quality yarns, inspiring makers to find peace and purpose in every stitch. And that is why they're donating $10,000 to Enchanted Makeovers to help out any way they can.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I also want to promote something. Y'all, Terry has written a book called The Little Bear Who Loved His Handmade Dolls, and with all the proceeds going to Enchanted Makeovers. So pick yourself up a copy. I wanted to talk about that as well. Yes. We'll be right back, everybody, with What I'm Liking.